Welcome back. Let's talk about Neverness to Everness. I expected another pretty gacha game borrowing Genshin's homework. Instead, I got an anime city RPG where I somehow enjoyed obeying the traffic laws. I don't know, man. It's fun. And I know that sounds kind of like a bit, and it is a little bit of a bit, but it's also the most honest way that I can describe why Neverness to Everness surprised me. Because yes, this is a gacha game. Yes, it has the familiar menus, limited banners, elemental combat, character upgrading, and all the tiny little currencies that get confusing that make your brain quietly start filing taxes. But the part that stuck with me wasn't really the combat or the polls. It was the city. Neverness to Everness is one of the first gacha games that I have played in a while where the setting does not just feel like a pretty package for quest markers, it feels like the actual point. So just to clarify, this is not a sponsored video. I've had no communication with Hoda Studios. I wasn't invited to beta. I went in mostly blind. I played through a chunk of the campaign. I messed with the menus, explored, fought things, drove around, and then, I kept playing for several hours after I finished recording the footage for this video. And that is usually a good sign. So the question for this video is pretty simple. Is Neverness to Everness actually worth playing long term? Or is it one of those free-to-play games you try for a weekend, go, oh, that was kind of neat, and then quietly abandon it like a productivity app in February? We all know that you're not sticking to your January resolutions. I know you're not, because I'm not. So you're not. So what makes it different? The biggest thing that sets Neverness to Everness apart is the modern city setting. Most of the major open-world gacha competitors are not really trying to do this in the same way. Genshin Impact is fantasy adventure, Wuthering Waves is post-apocalyptic sci-fi fantasy, Zenless Zone Zero has a very strong urban style, but it's not trying to be the same kind of open-world city playground that NTE is. Neverness to Everness is much more direct about it. The pitch is, here's a large supernatural city, here are cars, traffic, shops, NPCs, little side systems, odd jobs, and paranormal nonsense. Go live in it for a while. And honestly, that works. Heathrow does not feel empty in the way some big open world maps can feel empty, where there is technically space, but emotionally it's just a very expensive hallway between icons. There are NPCs walking around, there's traffic, there's little distractions here and there. There's enough movement and density that the city starts to feel like a place instead of a level, if that makes any sense. And that matters because gacha games are built for repetition. You know what I'm talking about. Doing those dailies in Genshin every day for the past 365 days. Yeah. You're not just asking, is this fun once? You're asking, do I want to come back here every week, every update, every patch, and every event? And for me, the answer was surprisingly close to yes. The thing I kept coming back to was just driving around. I know, very thrilling gamer commentary. Somebody alert the academy, but I mean it. Driving through the city, switching camera views, putting the music on, and just moving through traffic felt weirdly therapeutic. It reminded me a little bit of GTA in the broad sense that there's cars and city life, and that's all kind of central to the fantasy, but the feeling is completely different. GTA often makes you feel like you're two bad decisions away from starting in a local news segment. You feel kind of like a degenerate after playing a while. NTE made me feel like I was taking the scenic route to a paranormal errand while trying not to be rude at intersections. And honestly, I kind of love that. Combat is familiar, but familiar isn't always a bad thing. Neverness to Everness clearly borrows from what has worked in big gacha action RPGs. You have character switching, skills, ultimates, enemy types, and elemental style interactions that can cause different effects. If you've played Genshin, Wuthering Waves, or really any modern action gacha, You're not going to need a philosophical retreat to understand what the game is doing. It all kind of blends together and feels quite samey, but samey, like I said, is not necessarily a bad thing. And personally, I actually kind of like the combat in NTE. It's snappy, it's readable, it has enough interaction to feel satisfying without making me feel like I need to do spreadsheet calculus with particle effects. You know, that is a real line for me. If it gets too complex, it's just like, I don't know, it feels like work rather than playing a game. Some games get so deep into internal systems, team rotations, hidden multipliers, buffs, debuffs, and timing windows that the combat starts to feel less like playing a game and more like being audited by a wizard. NTE does not feel like that so far. The tutorials explain what is happening clearly enough. The compact has impact, and switching characters feels good. It's not the most complex combat system I've ever touched, I'll admit, but I don't think it really needs to be. For this kind of game, especially early on, I would rather have combat that feels clean and rewarding than combat that is technically deep but unpleasant to actually play. The animations are crisp too, although I would say they can feel a little more rigid than something like a Zenless Zone Zero. ZZZ has that absurdly polished squash and stretch music video combat feel, where every movement feels like somebody had a personal vendetta against boring keyframes. The animators have got to be paid super well to be able to handle this, because that is an insane level of detail that they put into all these animations. NTE is not quite there, but that's okay. It still looks good, it feels responsive, and it didn't really bother me while playing. I noticed a difference more when thinking critically about it afterwards than when I was in the actual playing of the game. And one thing I really appreciated is that Neverness to Everness does not feel as half-baked as I expected. That sounds rude, but honestly, I mean it as a compliment. A lot of these games can look stunning in trailers and screenshots, and then the moment you actually start navigating menus, changing settings, upgrading characters, or reading interface text, the illusion starts coughing up blood. This is an issue that I actually had with the recent Mongol Stardive, which the graphics are impressive. I like the fantasy aesthetic, but I just had an issue with the UI. I don't get it. There was just too many times that there were too many times where button presses didn't do what I thought they would. There was too many exclamation points that would not go away even when I checked out the detail in the character panel. It was too much. NTE feels more considered than that. It is way more polished. The UI is still a gacha UI, so there's absolutely moments where you're looking at icons, currencies, tabs, and reward claims like you've accidentally opened a casino inside a stationery store. There is way too many menus, but that is par for the course in gacha games. I wish they could condense it down, but to be fair, some of these menus do add some context and separate things in a more neat way than it could be if it was all just kind of sprinkled out into one menu. But overall, it's smoother and cleaner than I expected. The cutscene presentation also surprised me. A lot of scenes are actually animated, which I deeply appreciate because gacha games are notorious for sometimes doing the black screen with white text thing. And listen, I understand production realities. Not every moment can be fully animated, but there's only so many times a game can fade to black and say, and then a cool thing happens before I start feeling like I'm being robbed by a PDF. Neverness to Everness puts in more in presentation work than I expected. The character moments, city scenes, and story beats feel like they had actual attention on them. That is a big part of why the game made a strong first impression for me, at least. It's not just pretty in the marketing sense. It feels like the developers understood that polish is not only graphics, polish also means menus, pacing, transitions, onboarding, and how much the game respects your patience. The biggest surprise was how many side systems felt like they were trying to be the actual game systems and not just like decorative fluff. Fishing, for example, felt more fleshed out than expected. And trust me, I love fishing in video games. It's kind of my thing. I don't get it. I don't know why. My dad's the same way. We like fishing. We don't even fish in real life. We just like fishing in games. So, I don't know. Go figure. You can catch fish, sell them, upgrade your fishing rod, and make progress inside fishing itself. That matters because when a game adds fishing, there's always a 50% chance it's a real system a 50% chance it is tiny pond-shaped apology. Here, it feels like something I could actually spend time with. The city business layer also caught my attention. The game has this tycoon-like aspect where you're not only exploring and fighting, but also building up your place in the city. You know, that's smart. It gives the game another texture. You're not only logging in to fight enemies and spend stamina, you have a broader city life fantasy to invest in. It reminded me a little of why I liked seeing factory and base building elements in games like Arcanite's Infield. Those systems give you a break from the usual loop. They make the world feel more interactive, like your character is not just passing through a setting, but actually becoming part of it. And then there's the gacha system itself, which, honestly, also surprised me. NTE made a very strong impression here with me. The limited character banner doesn't have the dreaded 50-50 system. I'm sure you've all been made aware from the marketing and all of the people talking about it in the community. And this is huge. In games like Genshin, losing a 50-50 can feel like the game politely taking your savings, your hope, and your lunch money. And it is quite frustrating. There are many content creators that have made YouTube videos about this very thing. In NTE, limited characters are guaranteed on the limited board within the pity structure. That doesn't magically make gacha consumer friendly. You know, it is still gacha. It can still be predatory. Let's not put a halo on this little slot machine. But compared to the standard model, no 50-50 is a big deal. In my own experience, I got Natalie within around the first 20 pulls, and I then got duplicates of her. 2 duplicates of her. And I still had plenty of free pulls left in the 1.0 version content. I haven't even finished 1.0's story yet. You know, I actually stopped pulling because I didn't know that this level of generosity in a gacha existed or that it would last. And honestly, I feel like that's the most sane approach when you have 2 dupes of a character in the first 40-50 pulls. You know, you want to enjoy the launch rewards, but you also don't want to build your entire emotional retirement plan around them. You know how these games are. 1.0 might be really generous, 1.1, it may not. Now, it's not all glowing city lights and responsible driving. My biggest annoyance was controller support on the mobile version. I usually game on my iPad with a PlayStation 5 controller, and the fact that I could not remap controller buttons on mobile was pretty lame, I will admit, especially because from what I saw, controller mapping works perfectly fine on PC. I haven't tested on the PlayStation 5 yet, but if I had to bet, it also probably works there too. Now, the default layout was not unusable. I'm not saying it was necessarily bad. Obviously, they put some time and effort into thinking about how they wanted it set up, but it wasn't the same button scheme that I usually use in games like this. I usually stick to the same kind of pattern, and being broken from that pattern was really not the best feeling when everything else seemed really polished. I just thought that controller mapping wasn't one of those things that was particularly difficult to develop in a game like this, but yeah, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong. And for a game that clearly wants to be a cross-platform game and comfortable to play in different ways, that feels like something that they should probably fix. The other issue I noticed was the mobile audio quality. For some reason, voices on mobile sounded lower and crunchy. The quality just wasn't there for me. Especially Natalie, at times it almost sounded like the microphone was peaking during the recording session, or like the compression was doing something like unflattering. But I checked the audio settings and tried a few variations on the iPad, and it still sounded off. You know, on PC, the voices sounded fine. I don't know if that is a device-specific issue, a compression issue, or something else. So I don't want to overstate it, but it was noticeable enough that I wrote it down, and that usually means it annoyed me. I also want to briefly talk about the AI controversy, because it has been part of the conversation around this game. If you've been anywhere near X, then you've probably heard it if you're in these kind of communities. It is quite a loud group talking about this. Now, after launch, players started pointing at some in-world art and background assets, especially things like billboards and signage. I'll put a video up here or pictures of them. And they're arguing that some of it looked AI generated or AI processed. There has also been discussion around Hotta Studios' earlier comments that AI was used for atmosphere or reference work, while core assets and character portraits were not supposed to be AI made. I work with AI for several hours a day. Listen, I'm an AI integrator as part of my day job. I am deeply familiar with how it's used, how it's integrated into content direction, because I am also a digital content director professionally. And so I have a keen eye when looking at material before it gets pushed and published to make sure that if there is any artificial intelligence used in the production of those graphic art materials or videos, that is done so ethically, responsibly, and that it doesn't look like dog shit, frankly. Now, obviously, that doesn't make me the final boss of truth, but it does mean I am not coming at this from an AI bad because computers scary perspective. In fact, I have a relatively positive viewpoint on artificial intelligence. In fact, I have a whole other channel in which I talk about what I make with artificial intelligence. And even on this channel, I've talked about how I'm building a game engine from scratch using artificial intelligence. So I'm deeply familiar with the subject. My honest take is this. I understand why people are concerned, especially when generative AI touches our pipelines without clear disclosure. Artists obviously deserve credit. Audiences deserve transparency, and studios should be very clear about what is reference, what is production, and what actually ships in the game. At the same time, from what I've personally seen, I'm not convinced enough to make that the main story of this video. Maybe in a future video, I'll go into more detail and break down the images one by one to see what is or could be artificial intelligence. Some of the accusations may be fair, some may be overreaching, and because these games have long production cycles, I am cautious about assuming every weird background image or billboard is automatically generative AI. Now, if they look similar, it is possible that the original artwork was used as a reference by the artist who made the new one, and some of the downscaling onto mobile devices may cause the artifacting. It happens. It's part of game development, You can't take a very high-res image and then try to squish it and downscale it into a version that mobile can handle without taking up too much data and it look super great. So for me, the AI discussion is worth watching, but it's not what defined my experience playing the game, and nor did I particularly care, frankly. And if they decided to use artificial intelligence, it is in a very, very small, minute way. We already know that they did use some of it, I think, for like some of the development or some of the reference artwork, which I don't really care if they did or not. I'm using artificial intelligence to build my own game engine, so, I really can't point fingers. What defined my experience was that the game felt polished, cozy, and more distinct than I expected. So after playing Neverness to Everness, would I keep playing? Yes, at least through the 1.0 updates, absolutely. If the game holds up to 2.0, I could see this becoming one of those staple games I keep installed and come back to whenever there is a new update. I don't think it's for everyone. If you hate gacha systems on principle, this is still not going to magically fix that. No 50/50 is great, but it's still a free-to-play character collection game with banners, duplicates, currencies, and all the little psychological hooks that come sprinkled with the genre. But if you already like gacha games and want something that feels a little more free-to-play friendly, a little more modern, and a lot more city-focused, I think Neverness to Everness is absolutely worth trying. Especially if you like the idea of a supernatural urban RPG where you can fight anomalies, manage city life systems, go fishing, pull characters, and then spend 20 minutes driving around like a responsible little anime commuter like me. And I'm kind of a freak. And really, it's the part that I didn't expect. I expected the combat to be fine, I expected the characters to be flashy, I expected the gacha systems to either annoy me or bribe me with launch rewards, the usual par for the course. What I didn't expect was for the city itself to be the hook. And that's why I think the game has a real shot at sticking around. It's not just anime GTA, it's not just Genshin in a city, it's a high fidelity urban gacha RPG with enough polish, generosity, and cozy weirdness that I actually want to see where it goes next. That is a stronger first impression than I thought I was going to get, frankly. Alright guys, that's it for me. If you enjoyed this, definitely hit subscribe. If you're interested in following me and the other artificial intelligence talks that I do on my other channel, head over there. I will drop a link in the pinned comments. Yeah, I'm glad to have rebooted the channel. This is fun. Let's play some more games. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Trying to shoot a video. Yeah. You're making it a little difficult. But you're just so darn cute as you are. Say hi to YouTube. YouTube, say hi to Benji. Do it. Say hi in the comments. I'll know if you don't say it. Say hi. All right, bud. Time to go.